how can we do that? And, a lot of times we hear a lot of different things about fire and things that are going on. And what we do see, or what we do hear a lot about, is the public side of fire through public lands, and especially those out west and stuff. And a lot of times we look at it as, they talk about fire and they tell a lot about fire, but a lot of wildfire of what they talk about. But they also try to bring in prescribed fire. But if you look at it, the federal government, the 5 agencies that deal mainly with fire, BLM, BIA, Park Service, Forest Service, and Fish and Wildlife Service, they burn about 1.62 million acres a year. That's in all 50 states, okay? And you see in the graph below, you can see what each one of them does a year and things like that. And if you exclude what the Forest Service burns, which is the most active group, they're only burning, the other 4 agencies are only burning 500,000 acres a year. You think about that. There's several states that private landowners burn that much, no problem, and doing that. And also you got to remember, those main 4 agencies manage 95% of all the federal lands that are there, 609 million acres, and so they're burning 0.003% of their land every year. How are we getting behind the curve? Are we going to be able to catch up, Drac? If we burn 0.003, that's the deal. That's the question. What do we do? If we look at it on the private land aspect of it, just 2 states. Again, private land states with very little public ownership on it. Kansas having about 98%, one of the most private land states in the U.S., and then Oklahoma having 95%. Our 2 states, respectively, we burn anywhere from 2 to 4 million acres a year. That's private landowners. We burn, even on a bad year, we're burning more than all the 5 federal agencies in all 50 states do in 1 year. So, where is fire really found at? That's the deal. It's here in the private land ownerships. It's here in the Great Plains. A lot of it's in the southeast, but a lot of it's here in the Great Plains is what we can see. And you guys, the private landowners and the folks that work and help private landowners get things done, y'all are the ones that are the burners in this country. And again, we've got proven knowledge. A lot of times we get looked upon as being a bunch of hillbilly rednecks that can't do anything. But again, our records show a whole lot different. Just like what I just showed you, we're burning way more. 2 states are burning way more than the feds even thought about. And you start to include that. And so again, we've got proven knowledge, we've got the experience, but we also have the need for fire. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that need and we're wanting to do from it. And I think everybody's got an opportunity to learn from here. From folks in Nebraska and from folks in South Dakota and Texas and Kansas and Oklahoma. And they're already doing that, and I know that it is. And again, we need to learn from people that do it, not from everybody that talks about it, write about it, all that stuff. That's well and good, but you got to be doing. Got to get something done. Because again, we got to remember, 60% of the land in the U.S. is private ownership, and of that 60%, 63% of it is ranch and farms. People trying to live on that. A lot of the federal, talk here a lot about federal lands. 92% of it's in 12 states, and one state has 36% of it. That's Alaska. And doing that. And so prescribed burn associations are the example of what that is. And we can see that that's a proven thing that works. We can see that by people that are here and how this continues to grow. But we can also see how prescribed burn associations have continued to grow. Started first prescribed burn association back in 1997. There was 1. To date, we have 113 at last count, and they're still growing. They're in 19 states. This map, again, is probably not up to date, but it's the best that we've got so far. We always continue to add to it. This is from the Great Plains Fire Science Exchange map. of what we've got. And again, seeing that grow and seeing that need and seeing the importance is really what's encouraging. It's what we should begin to see. One of the biggest things we look at California. About 10 years ago, probably 8 years ago, there was 0 burn associations in California. There's 16 of them now in California, or 13 there in California. And the biggest majority of them has come in the last 4 years. Again, they're seeing that need for that. Not only, again, the wildfires are talking about it, that's what's helped draw on a lot of it, but again, the landowners there are understanding that they've got to use fire or they're going to lose their land with what they've got. And so that's what I want to talk to you about is what, as PBAs, have we accomplished over the last several years of doing that. Many of y'all may know and have heard, I have a burn entry form that I encourage everybody, especially PBA members, no matter what state you're in, to fill out. It's on the Oklahoma Prescribed Burn Association website. You can find it at ok-pba.org. It's a burn entry form. It asks about 20 questions about a burn, like what county, what state, what PBA, we try to have a list of all the PBAs that are there. And then no personal information. We do not ask you your name or anything like that. We don't want any personal information at all. And then acres, size, weather conditions, fire breaks, just some basic questions so we know what's going on within that. And we're going to go over that. And I started that in 2015. Since then, I've had 1,054 burns logged in from different people. These are just PBA burns that are being logged in. And they're from 46 different prescribed burn associations. 9 from Kansas, and they reported 97 burns over this time. 6 burn associations here in Nebraska, and they reported 93 burns. Oklahoma, we had 20 prescribed burn associations with 699 reports. South Dakota had 1 PBA reporting with 14 burn reports. Texas, 10 burn associations with 149 reports coming through that. And so from that 1,054 burns, we had 335,682 acres being burned. The average burn unit size was 319 acres, with the smallest one being reported was about an acre in size, and the largest one being 13,480 acres. Also, interesting to note, burns are being conducted, as Brian said, in every month of the year. So something's rubbing off. That's probably good. Also, growing season burns are burning during the growing season, during the summer months are becoming more common. We're seeing that go and doing that. Again, if you look at it, total number of acres by year from all the burn associations that are reported, that's the years. And again, you can see just like this year, weather conditions definitely impact how many acres and how many burns get done. I mean, that's just a big part of it, of what we see. But the big thing is, if you see the red line in there, that's showing a trend. And again, our acres are increasing. So that's a good, that's the key. We're trending upward, we're going upward, we're getting more stuff burned of what we can do. Same thing, you look at the total number of burns done by each year that were reported. Again, we're trending upward with our burns. You can see the good years and you can see some of the dry years of what's going on with the numbers going down. Within that, the average burn unit size, one thing that's different, it's actually trending downward, and I'm not real sure why. Why are we burning smaller units, or they're trending a little bit downward? There's not a whole lot, but it's starting to get a little smaller on that. But again, as I said earlier, here's the burn activity by month. So these are the number of burns that were reported by month. And again, as we can see, March and April throughout, from Texas all the way to South Dakota, is by far the biggest burn season we've got, is those 2 months. But the nice thing is we're seeing activities in every month of the year. And I think, again, we've seen that with this past year. We've got to take advantage of times when we can burn. We can't just sit back and say, we're going to, burn season's in March. We can't, and then March rolls along and the wind's blowing 40 mile an hour every day, you know, doing that, and we don't get anything done, and it gets dry. You know, we've got to take advantage of that, and it sees that we're starting to do that. And the biggest thing I think we're taking advantage of in a lot of places is the number of growing season burns. Again, it's showing that over 15%, almost 20% of all the burns that are being conducted and being reported are burned in the growing season. So that time frame of May all the way to the first part of October, kind of depending on where you live at. And so that's a good part. Again, we're taking advantage of that and doing that and seeing the benefits of getting that. And again, that helps us get more fire on the ground. Because again, as we all know with burning, you know, trying to get people to burn, getting people to burn is always a difficult task. Because again, they start to talk about liability and risk. But once you start to burn and you understand that, the next question you always ask people, did you get all the burns conducted this year that you wanted to get done? How many of y'all in here did that? Anybody in here get every burn done that they wanted to get done? Nobody. And again, I can ask the question, why? But I already know it, right? It's weather related. And so we've got to expand that season and we've got to expand that time. We also got to be ready to burn at any time so we can get more fire on the ground and chase back what we're doing. If you start to look at crew size and the amount of people that are working and helping with the burn association's burn, the average crew size is 11.3. I don't know who the 0.3 is. I have an idea, Scott Stout, who that might be. On that, the smallest crew reported was 2 people. The largest crew was 78. Had several that were in the 50s of doing that. If you look at a total, there was 11,447 people participated on Prescribed Burn Association burns since 2015. That's pretty incredible. That number of people, you know, of doing that. That's great. You know, and the interesting thing, the crew size, the average crew size is trending downward from what is that? And I'm not sure what it is. Is it a loss of interest? Are we losing people? You know, is our burn association getting smaller? I don't see that in most areas and stuff doing that. Or is it because are we gaining more experience and we're feeling more comfortable with burning and with fewer people? Not sure. You know, those are some of the questions that we have about that. And again, I hope it's not the first. I hope it's not, we're seeing loss of interest and stuff within that. I'm doing that. The next thing we ask on that burn entry form is, why are you burning? And again, you know, that sets apart a prescribed burn from a control burn, right? Having measurable goals and objectives, having a reason why you're burning out there. You know, it's, you know, and those reasons are, I don't like those neighbors anyway, or it's fun, you know, even though them can be good objectives sometimes. But we have that list. By far, the number one reason we're burning in the Great Plains, cedar control. 75% of everybody that filled, of the 1,054 burns, cedar control was one of the goals. So you can total that up and go, boy, he can't add. None of that adds way over 100%. Yeah, because you can check any box you want, any and all. What were your goals and objectives? So that's why it's like that. So 75% of all the burns, cedar control was the number one reason people were burning. Secondly, livestock production. And interestingly, wildlife habitat is right there just behind it. And that's slowly been catching up for the past 5 years. Continuing to go. So again, we're seeing more and more of that. 62% of folks, woody plant suppression, other woody plants besides cedar, doing that. And the very interesting one, wildfire control. 49% of all the burns listed, almost half of them, people understand that, hey, we are trying to do our part to suppress, control, contain, do whatever we can for wildfire control. And we need to see more of that. You know, and again, we can put that down for 100% of burns on the most part. Training is 21%. And then forest management, 4%. Because again, we just don't have a lot of managed forests in the Great Plains. If you look at the combination of reasons why most people burn, the top combination, was livestock production, wildlife habitat, wildfire control, cedar control, and woody plant control. That was 12% of all the burns reported were those 5 things. And then livestock, wildlife, wildfire control, cedar control, woody plants, and training was 9%. Interestingly enough, livestock production was 6% of all the burns as the only reason they're burning. That was by far the biggest single objective that people were using on that. Then you have livestock production, cedar control, woody plant suppression at 6, and then livestock production, wildlife habitat, cedar control, and woody plant at 5%. That's the top 5 goals that everybody listed as why they're out there burning on doing that. The next one you look at is fire breaks. So what kind of fire breaks are we putting in to contain and control our burns and to help do what we can? Number one, if you look at it overall between all the burn associations, mowed lines, wet lines, 30% of all the burns had mowed lines, wet lines incorporated in them. That's not just by itself. That's incorporated as part of the total burn unit. Bare ground was 26%, roads were another 26%, and then natural barriers such as creeks, crop fields, any kind of natural barrier that was there is 18%. And so again, you can see that by that. Then if you start looking at combinations of fire breaks, so the most used fire break commonly by itself was bare ground. Some type of bare ground fire break, being bladed, disked, some kind of bare ground, 15% of all that. And then you have mowed lines, wet lines, natural barriers, and roads being 12%, along with mowed line, wet lines, and roads. And then bare ground, mowed lines, roads at 11, and bare grounds, mowed lines, natural breaks, and roads, all 4 in a combination of about 10%. If you look at natural barriers, you can see that there again. Oklahoma, we're leading the way in roads and use of roads and natural barriers, because again, part of it is we probably have more roads than all the other states because of our settlement pattern and our pretty much roads around every section and lots of areas and stuff. So we see a lot of road use, county roads being used of what's going on and doing that, and along with natural barriers and doing that. Then if you start looking at the trend, that's what really gets interesting of doing that. This is looking at mowed line fire breaks by state. So looking at mowed lines and wet lines. Again, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas lead the way. So, Nebraska, 99% of all the burns done here in Nebraska have mowed lines somewhere on them. Whereas in Oklahoma, about 65, and Texas, only 25% of all the burns. But so you got an area, so Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, we see a lot of mowed line use, not near as we start to go south. And then we start to look at bare ground fire breaks. This is bladed, disc, some type of making a bare ground fire break. Texas, 84% of all burns have bare ground fire breaks made around portions of them. Oklahoma, 66% of them. And then you start looking at 14 and 16% for Kansas, South Dakota, and Nebraska. Not a lot of bare ground fire breaks. Then if you look at just the burns that were reported that used bare ground only, they made fire breaks around the entire burn unit. 46% of all the burns done in Texas are that way. 12% in Oklahoma, none in Nebraska or Kansas, or South Dakota, and only 2% in Kansas. If you look at mowed lines only, again, South Dakota, 50%, 24% here in Nebraska, 29% is the only type of fire break, and then you go to Oklahoma and Texas, you got 4% and 7%. Very little. So what's that telling me? There's some kind of imaginary line or some kind of imaginary deal that goes on because of that? I think a war started because of an imaginary line years ago. Was it Mason-Dixon line, And so that's the only thing I can figure out is we got that. And so looking at putting it together, that's kind of what I've come up with. So from there, I think we have what we call the Mosum-Diskey line. It's right there about Kansas and Oklahoma line. So everything below that gets a little bare ground fire break, and everything north, we're going to mow something down. So I guess if you learn anything, we do have a line of demarcation that's called the Mosum-Diskey line right there, but don't let it hurt anything. I think we'll be okay. So what else have we accomplished? What about the conditions we burn under? You know, what about those weather conditions? You know, ask you to try to give that. And if you look at there on the graph, or on the table there at the bottom, the maximum recorded temperature average was 71 degrees. That's when most people are burning. It's around 71 degrees with a range of 40 to 106. The minimum average was 57 degrees with the range being 26 to 99. Relative humidities, the maximum relative humidity average was about 55% that most people saw, with that range being 7 to 97. The low end humidity that most people recorded averaged 36%, with it being from 7 to 84. And then wind speeds, the maximum average was 13 mile an hour, with it being from 1 to 35. And then the minimum average was 6 mile an hour, with it being ranging from 0 to 19. So if you put together the whole extreme, we had people burning when it was 106 degrees, 7% humidity, and 35 mile an hour winds. Now, can we do that safely? You betcha. There's places we can burn that all day long. But is that for every place? No. But again, what that's showing us is that extreme range of conditions that we're burning under, that you're burning under, and you're doing it safely and effectively. That's why we're getting acres burned. That's why we will continue to get acres burned on doing that. So also look at wind. Let's look at wind direction. So this is all the PBAs together. This is everybody listed. And this is the average wind directions. If you look at that radar graph, spider web looking thing on doing that, the number one wind direction that everybody burns under is southeast wind. 19% of all the burns were conducted with a southeast wind. Next was a south wind at 16% of all the burns. And then northeast and southwest both tied at 13%. And then we had 11% of the burns with northwest. And so that's really, it's just interesting and good to see what goes on. The northeast is the one that always gets me. Because again, if I go back and start looking at records, I've been doing this stuff for 35 years. And I would say up until about 10, 12 years ago, I probably never burned a place with northeast winds. Because northeast winds always meant moisture, rainfall, or high humidities we couldn't burn. And now I bet I do over 50% of all the burns I do with northeast winds. Anybody else notice the same trend? That directions are changing with what we've got. Then if you look at states, so this is broken down by the states. So Kansas on the upper right as you're looking at it up there. Number one wind direction is north with 19% of the burns coming out of the north. Then you got northwest at 17, and then you got south at 16. Those are the top three. Nebraska's, again, northeast and northwest, and then southwest being the top three that we see. Texas, we're seeing southeast, south, and southwest as the top three. And Oklahoma, we're seeing northwest, southeast, and south. A little bit of difference between the northern end and the southern end, but not a lot. But the one thing you notice, or if you notice up there, how many of y'all burn with west winds? Man, there's hardly any of that up there. That is not a common wind direction that we see at all. Our wind direction, if we do get it, it's not conducive for good fire on that. But we see very little west winds at all on that. The next thing we want to look at is volatile fuels. Were cedars present? And this is what is really impressive to me, is 80% of all the burns reported have cedars present. And if you look at it, 96% of them, they're live standing cedars. 47% of the burns, they're cut but not piled. And then 12%, they're piled somewhere within the burn unit. But 80% of all the burns that are being conducted have volatile, highly flammable fuels involved. Because again, that's our number one burn objective is cedar control. But we're also conducting burns under extreme conditions with extreme fuel. And then that leads you to the next question, is what is our safety record? How do we burn? Can we do that, or do we burn safely with what we've got? And that's what we hope to answer right here. So our safety record, looking at spot fires and escape fires, real quick to define those. Again, a spot fire is any fire that leaves the burn unit, no matter what the cause, but we put it out with equipment and people on site, right? Get it out. An escape fire is defined as any fire that leaves the burn unit, no matter what the cause, but we have to call for assistance to come help us put it out. Spot fires, 16% of all the burns have a spot fire. That's just part of it. And that number fluctuates anywhere from 16 to 20% depending on the year. A lot of it depends on how many burns get done. And so that's it. So 1 out of 5 fires we do, we're going to have spot fires, right? This is kind of like riding a horse, riding a bicycle, or even driving a car. We're always going to have accidents, but we continue on, and we keep them small because we know what we're doing. We got equipment, we got people. And if you look at that upper graph, that's showing spot fires over time. Since we've been doing, again, they're trending downward. And again, the other interesting thing, if cedar was present on the burn unit, we had 19% of the fires reported a spot fire. That's where the spot fires come from. If there wasn't any cedar, there was only 6% of those fires reported some kind of spot fire. So again, that's our source. That's our big source, is cedar on doing that. Escape fires, 4%. Only 4% of all the burns listed reported an escape fire. And that's where they had to call somebody, call the fire department to come help, call in more people, call more stuff. And again, if you look at it, if cedar was present, 4%. If no cedar was present, that number went down to 1.4, but it's also trending downward. And so the question is, why are those numbers trending downward? You know, I've got some thoughts, some explanations. You know, is it experience? Is it we're gaining? So this is over time. So the more y'all burn, the more experience you gain, the more you understand it. Is that's what causing less spot fires? Because you know what's going to cause it? We don't have that? Because, you know, the other thing is crew size is trending downward. Spot fires are trending downward. Do we have better equipment? Do we have more equipment now than we did when we started? You know, possibility. What about removal of cedar? Are we starting to see, you know, we're thinking, well, we got cedar along the edge, we're going to cut them down now and get them back. We're getting smarter about how we're burning. Or is it the last question, have we started burning more? Are we starting on our second and third rotations through areas, and we've removed a lot of those cedars along the edge from fire, and we're seeing less and less. But again, we still have 80% of all the fires have cedar on them. Or is it all the above? I don't know. You'll have to tell me what it is. But the deal is, or the main thing is, it's the safety record. And then if you look at that safety record and stuff by size, that's the biggest thing of looking at it. So 73% of all the spot fires that were reported as less than 1/10 of an acre in size. And I'll bet you most of them probably weren't bigger than the table you're sitting in front of. Because you saw them, got on them, put them out. And doing that. If you really look at it, 86% of all the spot fires that were reported that occurred were less than 1 acre in size total. 86%. We only had 7%, or actually 12 spot fires that reported anything larger than, it was less than 10 acres in size. Larger than an acre, but less than 10. We had 5% that were less than 100 acres, but larger than 10. We only had 2 spot fires reported that were over 100, none that ever got larger than 1,000 acres. If you go to look at escape fire numbers, 26% of them were less than an acre in size, And then 34% were less than 10, 26% were less than 100, and 13%, or only 5, were greater than 100, none over 1,000. And so again, where are all these fires that burn up the entire county? I did not realize there were that many little counties in all of our states, 10-acre counties. We got a bunch of 10-acre counties because we burned them up. Where are they at? Where is this great risk that everybody talks about and that everybody goes? This is what we have to use. This is what we need to bring forward to everybody to help promote and to help show what prescribed fire does and can do and what you can do. And I applaud everybody for their ability to do that and to keep this safety record at what it is. That's important. And then the big key is the next one. Because again, you talk to people trying to get them to burn, oh, I'm scared of risk and liability. They're going to sue me for everything I got. Really. So of the 1,054 burns that were conducted in 5 states, we had 4 insurance claims. One of them, I know of 2 of them. One of them was a phone junction box they forgot was in the bar ditch. And it melted all the wires, and the guy had to pay to get it repaired, and it was about $5,000. Another one was a burn that was conducted on a day it shouldn't have burnt, got over in a bunch of hay on a cranky neighbor, and they filed an insurance claim on that. Again, no large sum of money whatsoever. And if you look at it, it's a 0.004% of all the burns had an insurance claim. But the thing you really got to look at, 99.996 of all burns were successfully conducted without any kind of insurance claim whatsoever. Is there anything that you can do that has that guarantee of, has that proven ability of 99.996? Lawsuits, 0. No lawsuits were filed on anything at all. And then we start to look at smoke issues. There was 13 smoke issues reported. Of that, 7 of them, it just stated smoke got on the highway. 1 of them was smoke on a county road. 4 of them that said they had smoked the neighbors out. And 1 of them, they'd put smoke on town of doing that. But also to look at that, there were no claims or no insurance claims or any lawsuits because of smoke. You're doing a great job of managing your smoke. You manage your fire, you manage your smoke. And that's what it does. So again, that's a 0.01% of all the fires listed had a smoke issue, or 99.99% of all the fires had no smoke issue whatsoever. That's what we can continue to show and prove of what we can do. And again, the more we can get this out, the more information that we can get, the more we can build a better case for prescribed burning. The more we can do to change policy, the more we can do to change laws, the more we can do to get money, to put more fire on the ground, and to do that by doing that. And so, again, what have PBAs accomplished? They have accomplished that private landowners can and do burn effectively, and they do burn safely. It also shows fires, again, not the liability risk that everyone thinks it is. Fire is an important part of management decisions. It's an important part of it. And y'all are showing that, again, that it makes that. And again, we show that we got to make management decisions not only as an individual, but we need to make management decisions collectively as a group, as neighbors, to help each other out and to get more things done effectively and safely with doing that. And I'd just like to conclude and to thank each and every one of you for all that you do to support prescribed burn associations, to do what you do, because that is what will make it go. That's what's made these burn associations grow across the U.S. Just from the great, it's a Great Plains deal, but it's grown all the way from coast to coast and border to border. And y'all have all been a part of it, and you've done a great job, and I thank y'all very much for that and everything that everybody does to support and promote prescribed fire. Thank you.